Hi, everyone. So welcome. I'm glad you guys are here today. This is our most important tool that we use, with our clients. So it's important that you understand it, you know it. The more you know, the better you can explain it and show your clients, that you're knowledgeable about what it is that you're doing. So we're going to get started. I'm first going to show you guys the changes that have taken place in December. So this is the revised contract from December 20. I want to say it was the 16th of December. So make sure that you are using the new contract. And if you have printed out previous ones, because everyone does business differently, or if you've downloaded and saved it, just make sure you always are using the most up-to-date contracts. So we're just going to go over the changes first, and then we'll get into other things. So you'll notice that the changes on the RPA are going to be in red. So I'm going to kind of zoom in a little bit if I can. So here, this shows you that the first change to the first page is going to be item D2, which is increased deposit. Now, increased deposit is typically used when, well, for my situations, and you guys might have others as well, but sometimes, let's just say your client doesn't have the deposit on hand because maybe it's in a 401k or maybe it's a gift or something like that along those lines. So they're not able to comply with maybe submitting it within the 3 business days, or maybe the listing agent has shortened it to 48 hours, 24 hours, because that does happen too. So in that case, if you know that that's going to be an issue, then the increased deposit is no longer on the first page. It is an addendum that needs to be attached to the contract. So you would look for Form IDA, and then on there you would give the information as to when you would be submitting that additional deposit, how much, and all that good stuff. So that's one of the first changes. And then on page 2, one of the biggest changes is the seller payment to cover buyer's expenses and costs. So this here looks very different than what it looked before. So you see seller credit to buyer. So if you're asking your seller to, pay, let's just say their closing cost, $10,000, that's where you put the dollar amount right there. So that's going to be the dollar amount. And then they have on the side for closing costs. So on G2, it says additional seller credit and terms. And again, it does let you know that it does not include buyer broker compensation. So this has nothing to do with your compensation. This is strictly for the buyer. So here, let's just say that you end up putting 25,000 in that dollar amount, which is obviously going to supersede their closing costs. But maybe you notice that they're giving a credit for flooring, or they're giving, or maybe your client wants to ask for something that they noticed during their walkthrough. Sometimes maybe it could be cosmetic, it could be the pool needs to be cleaned out, or who knows, whatever it is. But that's where you're going to give the additional description as to where those costs are going to be allocated, is going to be on G2. So you'll put the full amount in G1, and then you'll just give the additional explanation if it's in addition to closing costs. And then on G3, this is the place where the SPBB is no longer used, which is kind of nice. You don't have an additional form. So it's been incorporated into the RPA. So now you got to make sure that you do fill out this portion, because if you don't, then compensation will not be negotiated with your offer. So here you're just going to check, seller payment for buyer's obligation, and then you're going to put in the percentage, or the amount, whatever your BRBC or your buyer broker agreement is, has to match this. So it can't be more. And if you notice, it does say buyer affirmatively represents that at this time the offer is made, buyer has a written agreement with buyer's broker. It's valid, it covers this property, and it provides for compensation for no less than the amount stated above. So again, you can't make any changes to this if the BRBC doesn't reflect the same. So always make sure you understand that. And this is where the buyer is going to certify that. Does anyone have any questions up until this point? Okay, we'll move on. So the next change is on M3, which is occupied units by tenants or anyone other than the seller. So here you want to make sure that you include the TOPA if it's not, because it's not attached. So you have to attach it. And that's, again, just to express how the property is going to be delivered once, escrow closes, with tenants, without tenants, whatever the terms are. So always make sure that that form is, always know if your property that you're buying is tenant occupied or owner occupied. That's really important, obviously, because there's different laws. Okay, so you want to go down. So that's basically it for the grid, but we'll go into other changes that have been added. So on, let's see, this is page 7 under 10, allocation of cost. So point of sale requirements, if you notice on there now, they have the optional wildfire disclosure report. That never used to be on there. Now it is, for obvious reasons. So make sure that you guys are filling out that the FHDS form to determine who is going to be responsible for doing the defensible space compliance, if there's one required. So just make sure that you always know. If you're not sure, then fill it out anyways, and indicate seller to pay. If you're not sure if you're in that zone or not, just do it. And that way, if it comes up later, you're not having to renegotiate later, because it's easier to negotiate up front than when you're in the middle of something. So unless your buyer would be okay with, doing it themselves. So that's just a conversation to have with them, or maybe make it a habit to do that as well. And let's see. Okay, so on page 11, 18, and this goes back into the compensation. So again, this is it's just they added a paragraph, just making sure that the buyer and seller understand, timing of broker compensation, seller or buyer or both, as applicable, agree to pay compensation to broker as specified. So again, all they're doing is, because they incorporated, like I said, the SP BB inside here, they're just making sure all the verbiage is in here. And then third-party beneficiary, seller acknowledges and agrees that buyer broker is a third-party beneficiary of this agreement and may pursue seller for failure to pay the amount specified in this document. So again, they're releasing the liability from the broker and they're putting it back on, to whoever it is that's agreed to pay that compensation. So on page 12, escrow instruction paragraphs, escrow holder provisions. So it's just, goes into, they specify just a more general provisions. So you want to always, like I said, make sure that you know what it is when you're signing. Or if you're not sure, have escrow even help you in regards to their instructions if you have no idea what it is. Copies of statement of information, the tax withholding instructions, all of that information obviously is going to be part of the escrow instructions. Broker compensation and payment, compensation disclosure, escrow holder shall provide a buyer a closing statement or other written documentation disclosing the amount of compensation paid to buyer's broker. So now, they have to disclose how much was paid. So that's, again, basically more for escrow, but that is something that they're going to be showing to everybody so everybody knows. Invoices, if there's any invoices that escrow has to pay, you have to make sure that they receive them within 3 days or within a sufficient time to close or sooner. Otherwise, escrow may not pay, that invoice. Verification of deposit. Again, that goes back to Form IDA in the event that you do need an additional deposit. And delivery of amendments. And this is important because I think a lot of times, we don't submit things as fast as we should because we know that, okay, they agreed, but we don't get it to them. So it's important to provide escrow within 3 days after it's been executed, whatever, was agreed upon. That way escrow can drop their amendment if one is necessary, depending on what it is that you're talking about, or what you're coming to an agreement to. But it's important that they have all the documents as well. So that way it doesn't, obviously delay anything. And let's see. Okay, so it looks like on the signature page, page 15. So this is important as well. So obviously, the first thing you want to ask your client when they're going to be, signing an offer is, how they're taking title. Are they buying it in their name, in a trust, in an LLC? Who's buying it? What type of, is it a probate? Is it a partnership? Like, just you need to know how it's going to be held, because you need to know the full entity name, and then you need to know who is the actual legal authorized signer for the transact or for that entity. So it's important to make sure that you complete this RCSD form, unless you have it marked down here that the in non-individual entity buyers, full entity buyer, contractual identity buyer. So just make sure that you're familiar with that, and if you're not sure, you can always ask, and we can definitely tell you, which one it falls under. But you definitely want to make sure that, like I said, that you have the right. You're not going to have them sign the name. That's why they have it here printed, signature by, and it's whoever the entity person is, whoever that legally authorized signer is, and then printed by our name, and then you print the name of the legal authorized signer. So if you guys have any questions or you're not familiar with that, let us know. Maybe a lot of you don't deal with that, but in the event that you do, like I said, it's important that you have the right person signing and it's executed correctly. And the same thing for seller. That's buyer side. Same thing for seller side. Obviously, if you're a listing agent, you need to know who your seller is and executing it correctly as well. And those are the changes to the RPA from December 2024. Does anyone have any questions before we move forward?
I do, Sonia.
Yes.
Back on escrow, you mentioned that escrow has to disclose their fees. What did you say on that?
So no, well, they have to do that too, but
Yeah,
the
but
new
yeah, I was gonna say,
paragraphs yeah. So the new paragraphs that changed basically is they have to the escrow has to what's the best word? I'm trying to think of the best word to say it. So they already disclose, but
right.
whatever it is that they do disclose, like it can't change, but they have to provide, the copies are getting really they added the 3 days. 3 days is what the big thing is. So copies of anything that you need, it has to be sent to the escrow within 3 days. So everything that happens, because what I'm getting from this change is a lot of buyer's agents or seller's agents, I'm not sure who, but one of the agents is not delivering information to escrow in a timely fashion. And so there's a lot of, I guess, miscommunication. There's probably a lot of, issues after the fact or what have you. So this is really important for them to put it in here. I just noticed that they're just really wanting to hold everybody up to the 3 days. So everything, whatever changes, whenever it says buyer and seller, receive escrow holders general provisions. So they're supposed to get it directly from escrow. Sometimes escrow send it directly to the agents and not to the buyer. So they're trying to get in the habit of them sending it directly to the buyer as well as the agent as well. But anything that's required has to be they want the escrow holder to know within 3 days. So like, let's just say, for instance, there's an association, there's solar, there's, whatever that there is, they need to know it so they have the time to process things. Because like I said, what I'm seeing is there's delays, there's additional fees, and then there's just a lot of extra things that happen. So I guess that's my, assumption
Okay,
as to why they're wanting to know what those are ahead of time so that way they can disclose, I guess, the
got
whatever.
it. Like, so, yeah, association, who the association is, if there's solar contracts, like, oh, right. Okay, okay,
Yeah, and just everything, like
yeah.
even like it
No,
does
like, yeah,
and it
like you
even
should
talks.
do.
Yeah, exactly. It's stuff that we should automatically do, but like I said, I know everyone gets busy and, time
Mhm,
just goes, but they're trying to get it so that way, like I said, it must be something that's a problem, for them
mhm.
to address it the way they are. So
Okay, thank you.
you're welcome. So anything else? If not, we can move on. I was just going to show you guys the importance of templates and how how it helps you, when you're writing an offer, because this way you won't miss certain things, and maybe you overdo certain things, so that way it doesn't ever leave you where you're like, shoot, I didn't mark this, and now you're having an issue. So really quick, I'm just going to use this listing as I'm going to use this listing as an example. And let me see. I don't know. I think you guys can't see it. So I think I have to, I don't know if I can. I might have to stop the share and reshare for it to. Okay. Here we go. So I'm just going to use this as an example. So let's just say you just showed this property on Chase Road in Fontana, and your clients, like this home and they want to write an offer. So what you can do is, and some of you may be familiar with this, but those of you that aren't, this is a huge saving tool time, is you can, copy the MLS number, and then you go into your zip forms. And let me make sure. There, yay. Okay. So now you're in your zip forms. Now, once you're in your zip forms, or your car forms, whatever you want to call it, this is where your contracts are. So here, you would go into new transaction, new purchase, because you're going to create a completely new transaction. So you're going to go into the MLS Connect, and that's where you're going to paste that MLS number that you copied of the property that you're going to be, putting the offer on. So you're going to put find, and then you make sure that it is in fact the right one. That's important. And then you use listing. And so once you have that, you're going to name your transaction. So I personally like to name it the property address, because even if I have, Mr. John Doe as a buyer, if I name every transaction Mr. John Doe, it could get confusing. You don't know which is which. So I personally prefer to just name it, the property address. But again, that's just a preference. It's your choice. So here I'm going to go select residential, and then templates. I'm a big template person, like I'm mentioning. So I will look for the right template. So I have a standard purchase right here. 1224. So it's because it's updated, and then I'm going to save it. So now that I've saved it, I'm going to go into my documents. And because I've saved this as a template, I do have the forms that typically are signed when I do a contract. So I have the buyer representation and broker compensation, a California purchase agreement, and a seller license to remain. Now, obviously, if I've already signed my BRBC, I won't sign it. But sometimes, you can just sign a touring, like a touring form, and not an actual BRBC. So at this time is when I generally, if I don't have a full one for 3 months, this is when I'll have them actually sign and commit to those 3 months if I haven't already. So that's why it's there. And then obviously, the RPA is there, and I include the SIP because a lot of times, sellers are there, and I want to make sure that, we negotiate the possession, because that's, obviously important. So what I'll do is I'll go into my California RPA, since that's the one we're talking about. So we'll go to the RPA, and this is a disclosure regarding agency, which is obviously one of the very first forms that they want you to sign. And if you're not familiar with this form, which I'm sure you are as agents, you should be, this establishes agency. So this is very important and should be, like I said, the first form that you sign with your clients. Here, the California Residential Purchase Agreement. So I'm going to show you just basically how I do it. Obviously, the date you prepared, and this offer is from, and again, remember, you're writing the names of, whoever the offer is from. So we'll just put Mr. Buyer. If you do have more than 2 buyers, you do have to attach an additional addendum. We'll go over that when the signature line comes. But if you do, you can, you'll have to attach that. Property address, just make sure that you have the city, the county, and it should have been transferred over once if you use, like I said, the MLS Connect. That's the beauty of the MLS Connect. Now moving down, confirmation of agency. These boxes are super important to make sure that they are filled out. So mine is already filled out because that's how I filled it out in my template, which would typically be how it should be. But in this case, because our brokers are the same, we are considered a dual agent. So I would no longer just be that. It would be both buyer and seller because we are a dual agency, being that we work under Remax Champions. Now, if you're a Champions Real Estate and working with the Remax Champions, then you would not be a dual agency. But in this case, we are. So always make sure that those boxes are completed. Here you go down to purchase price. So let's just say you're offering 600,000. Now, if you were offering all cash, you would click here. Close of escrow typically is 30 days for a finance offer, or you can 21 days, be more aggressive, or whatever it is. Just make sure that you have talked to your lender and you guys are on the same page, and also talk to your buyer and they're aligned with the closing date as well. You could also put in a specific date if needed. Expiration of offer. So if you, let's just say, for instance, you have a great offer and you see that, you want to have an answer because maybe they want to write another offer somewhere else. So they don't want to lose out on other things either. You can make it expire sooner than the 3 calendar days. You can make it in 24 hours because you want to get a response, right away. So that would be there. Initial deposit. Mine is defaulted to 10,000, but again, I do play it, just depending on the offer, depending on their financing. There's a lot of things that go into whatever the deposit amount is. But as a rule of thumb, that's kind of what I put in there. And again, it's in my template. The things I do have in my template are things that it's going to make me look at and remind me to address those things. And so here is where your loan amount goes. So let's just say they're doing VA, then they're going 100%, or FHA, 96.5%, just depending on whatever, their loan amount is, or conventional. So we'll just put 500,000 saying that they're going to do that. And then it defaults to conventional, but if they are going FHA or VA or seller financing or anything other, then your typical that's here, then obviously you would indicate that here or select the appropriate box. Now, if they are getting additional financing, maybe the seller's financing a second, or maybe they're doing a first and a second, or whatever it is, here is where you would put additional financing cost. And then going on to page 2, here is, again, like we mentioned, the seller credit. So let's just say we put 20,000. We saw this property. They want it for closing costs, but let's just say they also want it for, a credit for flooring. We can, and that's where that would go as well. And then if you notice the seller's payment for buyer's obligation, it's already, again, in my template as a certain amount, which does match the BRBC. And then verification of all cash. So this here, obviously, when you're writing an offer, hopefully you've already verified funds with your client or their lender to make sure that they have sufficient funds to close, and also for, their down payment. So whether they're doing cash, they need to have, show you sufficient funds for that, or down payment or closing costs. So whatever it is. And then hopefully they've already pre-approved as well. So you want to mark if they're pre-approved, fully underwritten, or how they currently stand. Final verification of the condition of the property, 5 days default. If you guys don't like that, if you want it shorter, longer, you can always change that. But 5 is, I think, pretty standard. Assignment request. If you're not familiar with that, that's in order to, let's just say the buyer wants to assign a new buyer. Then they have 17 days after acceptance to do that. Or you can, change that as well. I think really I'd never seen that changed. Contingencies is a really big, important, part of the contract, knowing how fast you can get things done. In the event you're paying all cash, then obviously you're going to probably remove, loan and potentially appraisal. So then in that case, you would attach the CRB to remove those, to show them in good faith that you have removed those and not, just saying. So your loan contingency, everything defaults to 17 days. So it's just really up to you on how strong you want your offer. If you want to, again, know your lender, whatever their comfort is to lower the loan amount, or not loan amount, the loan contingency time frame, and then the appraisal contingency time frame. And then if you notice in 8B, it does say appraisal contingency based upon appraised value at a minimum of purchase price, or so in the event your client is willing to pay, above, let's just say, whatever the appraised value is, you can put that in there. So in the event, again, if you're not waiving the appraisal contingency completely, but you are saying they are willing to pay, a certain price, whether or not it appraises. So that is where you would write that, and that would be right here. Okay. And then investigation of property. That is, for you to inspect the property. And so if you feel, I mean, for me personally, as a buyer's agent, I want to know if my clients are in or out. I don't want to give them the full 17 days. I know a lot of, we are protecting our buyers, but we also need to make sure that they're, on track as well. And so I wouldn't want anyone taking 17 days to tell my seller, no, thank you. So kind of vice versa. And so I'd let my clients know, what, within the first 5 days, we should know if we want this property or not. And that way we are either moving forward or we're canceling. So we don't waste, as many more time than that's needed. So that's the purpose why I do shorten the times, for that reason. And I want to make sure that they're going to review, all the disclosures, everything. We want to review everything. Like I said, I want to know that we're moving forward, and basically everything now is in the lender's hands to get it done. And our job as a buyer's agent is, pretty much done. So that includes, the HOA documents, review of leased items. So like solar, water softeners, anything like that. We want to make sure that we get those documents right away. And you know what? Unfortunately, we are at the seller's mercy sometimes, and we don't get those items as quick as we would want them to. And like I said, that's kind of what we talked about before, with the changes. So that could be why. But if you are a seller's agent, make sure you are doing that, because you don't want to give a buyer a reason to cancel, at the very end, because they finally get the HOA docs and they're like, oh, I don't like this. I didn't know this. Or maybe the solar contract and they're like, wait a minute, I didn't know that this is this, or whatever the case may be. But you want to protect your seller. And by protecting your seller, that's doing all that work up front, not waiting for escrow to open. So just a word to a wise there, if you're a listing agent. And then time of possession, or actually, hold on, I missed the sale of buyer's property. Don't ever forget that. So, because it's kind of hidden there. But always, obviously, if you're submitting an offer and your client has to sell their property, make sure you attach that COP. I have seen where people will write it like in the notes here, buyer contingency on buyer sale. And it's like, that's not enough. That form has been, is there for a reason. There's a lot of different things that you have to check. So that way you make sure that, you're performing. So that's the purpose of that form. So make sure you use it. Time of possession. So again, this is important because, we already know buyers want their keys as soon as it records. They're excited, they've waited, but unfortunately, that's not always the case. Obviously, if the property's vacant, there's no reason why you can't get them the same day. But sometimes there's a seller and there's reasons why they have to stay in the property after closing. Could be that they have a contingent sale as well and they're trying to get into their next home, or, there's a lot of different variances, but make sure that you are using the appropriate addendum, whether you're in, they're going to stay 29 days or less or 30 days or more. Make sure you're incorporating the correct addendum, either the SIP or the RLAS. and that you've completed, who's paying for what, how is it to be handled? Because there's a lot of things happen during this time. So make sure, like I said, that that's all in agreement ahead of time. And if there is tenants, like we mentioned, then obviously, fill out that TOPA form and be specific as well. Same thing of how and when and what it's going to be transferred. So documents, fees, compliance, time for performance, seller delivery of documents. I typically put 5 days because, like I said, for most part, selling agents should already have that already ready. But again, that doesn't always happen, but we're hopeful. So that way we can, get that to our buyers immediately and get them to waive the inspection. And sign and return escrow holder provision and instructions 5 days after delivery is sufficient time. Time to pay fees for ordering HOA documents 3 days. Like, there's no reason why a seller can't pay. As soon as a deposit is received from a buyer, if they want to, wait till then that's perfect. But that's should be when it's done. Install smoke detectors and water heaters and bracing, obviously 7 days after acceptance or before an appraisal. We want to make sure that that's done because we already know if the property is being financed, that they're going to be charged to go back to verify that there's a smoke detector, which is like 30 or 40 bucks, but they charge you like $200 to go back. So makes sense to have, those in place before they go out there. Evidence of representative authority. So 3 days after acceptance, and that's obviously in the event you have a trust or you have any type of other entity, provide the correct paperwork so you can show that they are authorized to be signing under that entity. Next page is items included and excluded, and this is a big thing. I have these defaulted just so that way I don't miss something. Obviously, there's times where they'll say there's no microwave there, Sonia, so we're not leaving the microwave. Or there's no Ring doorbell, there's no video doorbell, but it's okay. I rather them do that than me forget and then, assume that I did click it. But just make sure, be mindful of these things, even excluded items. You want to make sure. I recently had someone call me because there was a above ground pool. And in the MLS, it didn't say anything about it staying. It didn't say anything about it being gone. The buyer's agent didn't ask. And so when they did their final walkthrough, the buyer said, "Oh, they're taking that right because I don't want it." And so the agent calls me and says, "Hey, Sonia, my buyer doesn't want that pool." So I told them, "We'll call the agent, let them know, see what they tell you." And she basically said, "Well, my client can't move it. It's already at the end. It's too late. You didn't say you didn't want it." So it's just one of those things where if your clients don't want something, make sure you exclude that, whatever it may be. Make sure you exclude it so they have sufficient time to remove things or make arrangements or whatever the case is. Or if there's items that they do in fact want, make sure you put those in there, because even though you text the agent after and say, "Hey, I forgot to put this. Is this included?" "Oh, yeah, 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 yeah." Well, what happens when the sellers are moving? Sometimes they just take stuff. They're not even think about it. They take it. You call them after the fact and they're like, "Oh, well, it wasn't in the contract. Too bad." Like, you don't want to be the one to give that mess, those news to your clients because they expected something different. So this is a big, like I said, take the time to really talk to your clients about this portion, if there was anything that they wanted or didn't want.
Sonia,
Yeah.
um, one of the houses that I sold, the seller, and he knew not to take it because I had told him this. He took the blinds.
Oh my God.
And so he had to go back and install them.
Wow.
They were
Yeah.
like nice colonial wooden blinds. So FYI.
Yeah. Yeah. That's why I say be specific, because like I said, as a listing agent, when I go through, I walk through with them and ask them, because sometimes they have stuff, that I don't know if they're leaving or not. I don't want to assume, but so it's important to, I always ask them to write me a list of what's staying and what's not, That way it was in their writing, they handed it to me, and I have that to share with the buyer's agent, so that's kind of what I do. I don't like to, assume in any shape or form.
That's smart.
So, okay, so the next thing is the NHD, which is typical. There's certain fees that are typical that sellers pay and buyers pay. So typically, this, but anybody can pay. But in California, seller, we do always ask the seller to pay for the NHD. And again, you can pick whichever company you're comfortable with. Just here's a drop down. You can pick whoever. Um, I'll tell you why I use property ID. I use, and things could have changed because this was in the early 2000s. So in the early 2000s, property ID used to pick us up. And I don't know any of you guys remember this or were part of this. Used to pick you up in a limo and drive you to downtown LA to where they were, and they educated you, and their attorney was there, and she gave us like just so much information. And I was highly impressed with property ID and how they stand behind their reports, and they litigate in California. Whereas they were showing me other reports. And again, this could have changed because it was so long ago. But a lot of the other NHD companies litigate in different states. And they said for them to do that, it's because they know people aren't going to drive to a different state to go litigate. So, or the laws are different over there. So that was one of the reasons why, obviously, I'm protecting my clients. And so I've always chosen to use property ID. So that's just a kind of little bit of a history as to why. Always know, it's important where you're sending your business. So if you, interview a few of the reps from the different ones and just kind of see what the difference, what they provide, how do they back their, their reports, where do they get their information, and understand that it's just not, let me just order this. You should know a little bit more about it. So hope that's helpful. And then optional wildfire disclosure. This is we were talking about. They added this. So here you can decide, who's paying for it, both seller, buyer. Again, if it doesn't end up applying, then it doesn't end up applying. But you can always ask up front. And then the next section, Q3, is any other type of report. So termite inspection, except septic, because there's an addendum for that. But this is, other, depending on the house, there could be other things that are needed. But here is where you can put, termite inspection, section 1 clearance, or however you want to word it. Q4 is smoke alarms, carbon monoxide detectors, and water heater bracing. So here is where you're going to indicate who's paying to have this. Obviously, seller, it's their home, they have the access. So, likely so that they should pay for, Q4. Now, in Q4, if it is marked seller, it is important that the seller is aware that they have to do it like in the previous page says 7 days, within 7 days of the acceptance of the offer. Because in the event the appraiser goes out there and now it's still not done and the buyers get a reinspection fee, well, per the RPA under 10B1, the seller is required to pay that because they failed to do what they had agreed to. So be mindful of that. You guys know that, just stay on top of those things because again, as a listing agent, you want to make sure that you push your seller. And if they choose not to do it, well, just let them know. If you don't do it, you're going to have to pay a reinspection fee, set up the expectation so they know, and there's no, misunderstanding anywhere. The next one, Q5 and Q6, typically I don't mark those, and that's been from Rod. Rod advises us not to. And the reason being from what, his explanation is, your seller is signing a blank check basically, because if it does, you do mark and they do agree on here, then that's saying that they're going to have to pay for any, corrective or, whatever comes out in any type of city inspection, then they're going to have to pay for those. It's better to let them negotiate once we find out what those issues are, opposed to just agreeing, like he says, writing a blank check. So I personally counter them out as a listing agent when I see Q5 and Q6. So as a courtesy, I don't do that also to, to another agent. I do let the buyers know if in the event something comes out, it's going to be up to us to negotiate in our, repairs and stuff like that. So at that time, we'll address Q5 and Q6. So on Q7, escrow fee, typical, each pays their own. You can designate who you want or seller's choice. Owner's title policy, same thing, typical for seller to pay for their own policy. And again, you can indicate who or seller's choice. And then it's defaulted to buyer's lender insurance policy that the buyer pays. County transfer tax fees, seller, city transfer tax, which not every city has them. You can always ask escrows, and escrow can provide you. So that way, as a seller, or a seller's agent, you make sure that you are including that on your net sheet. If you're doing your own net sheets, if escrow's doing them, they should know. And then you see the other ones have defaulted. This has all been improved for many years now, but it's kind of nice. So the HOA, a fee for prepping disclosure, seller, HOA certification fee, buyer, HOA transfer fees. Here you decide. So seller is typically, like I said, who pays. Private transfer fees, I don't really ever see that, but you see it's defaulted to seller. Just so you guys know, there are some times when there is an association that has an enhancement fee, and I don't know if any of you guys have ever dealt with this, but there's certain HOAs that have an enhancement fee, and basically what that is it's a fee that's charged when they transfer. So it's like when a new buyer comes in, they just charge this fee, and sometimes it can be pretty hefty. I've seen it be $1,500, $2,500, and if you're not aware if the HOA is going to have that and you don't mark that, that can sometimes become an issue too. But from what my understanding is that can actually qualify under the private transfer fees, where it's defaulted to seller now. But you just always want to confirm that, because again, as a listing agent, they might try to fight you on that too. So just be mindful and just do your due diligence. And then Q16 is you can put your TC fee or any other fee that you need paid through the transaction, and then who's paying for it. And then you're going to go down to home warranty, which I love now that they allow the buyer to choose, because it should always be the buyer's option to choose their coverages, and always give your client the option to choose more. So like, let's say you say seller's going to pay here and $850. Make sure you're even paying attention to the fees now, because the fees have really changed and they continue to change. So make sure you're up to date on looking at your, the amounts of the coverages, the different coverages, and always shoot and aim for the best coverage, because that first year is when you're going to get the most calls from your clients if things aren't well. And at least you have the home warranty and it covers, has the best coverage. So that way, it's kind of nice for them just to call them, and then you're not having to worry about it. So if the agent responds and says, oh, my client only wants to pay $600 towards a home warranty, okay, that's fine. If that's all you can negotiate, but show the brochure to your client and explain to them the difference. And if you don't know the differences, definitely sit with the reps from, again, when you click on this, there's so many different ones, probably talk to at least 2 or 3 and get to know their coverages, get to know, a lot of different things about home warranty, because it's important for you to sell it right. Because a lot of times, a lot of things are overpromised. I had a client call me once. Actually, she wasn't my client, but she was like someone who found me. She had just closed escrow, and shame on her, she didn't use me. So she calls me after and she says, hey, Sonia, my air conditioning doesn't work, and the agent I was using told me that the home protection is going to take care of my AC. I said, well, when you did your home inspection, was it working? She says, no. He said I could just call them when I closed. I'm like, oh my God. So no, that didn't happen. So you don't want to overpromise, those things. And so on page 4 here is the different addendums. So like I said, don't forget if you're doing a probate, if it's manufactured, those are the ones I think that are pretty common. Tenant occupied, if you're attaching an additional addendum, whatever it is, septic, make sure you're not forgetting that. So just look through everything and make sure that there's no other addendum that needs to be added to your RPA, because that's really, really important. So the next thing, basically, so that's the most important. Everything else is just more overview of, I'm sure you guys know how to reference it. So like 10C, you just look for 10 and then you find C, and then it goes, more in depth about the home warranty. So it's just kind of like a guide of where to find the information to get a little bit, more information in. So we'll go down here to, the liquidated damages. So liquidated damages is important to be signed. And again, don't look as a buyer's agent. Like I said, it's actually a good thing, because you do want your clients to have skin in the game. You do want to let them know that, we're not here to waste anybody's time. We have to be mindful of that. So make sure that they initial there and they understand what it means. It means, if they fail to perform, just because they've signed contingencies, they're ready to close, and they just don't feel like it anymore. I mean, there's different ways out. And I can tell you, I've gotten to the end where things do happen sometimes, and it's not because they just didn't want it. Certain things have happened, and because of the communication, because of, the relationship you created with the agent on the other side throughout the transaction, they understand. So it makes them feel bad to even think about keeping your client's deposit. But when you're working against them, you're avoiding them, you're just trying to be hard, you're not being a team player. When things go south on your side, and trust me, it's going to happen, it does, don't expect them to all of a sudden just change, how you've been acting this whole transaction. It's so important to build, that relationship with them throughout the transaction. It's easy to have a bad transaction, but it's hard to have a good one. But it's a good feeling. It's less stress. So you always want to make sure that you are doing the right thing. And it's not about, strong arming anybody. It should be, mutually beneficial to both parties, because both parties obviously are going through whatever emotions are going through, whether it's excitement, maybe the seller's sad because they have to leave for whatever reason, or whatever the case is. But we just should always be very, mindful and courteous of those things as well, because it just makes the whole transaction easier, and they'll want to work with you again. That's also a plus. Mediation here. So parties agree to mediate. So regardless of whether they check arbitration or not, if there is some type of disagreement, mediation is required to be done first. In the event that doesn't work, then at that point you have arbitration, and arbitration is optional to initial. However, if one party initials and the other doesn't, it should be countered out as to which way are you arbitrating or you're not. So you eventually do have to come to an agreement. But in my experience, I've even after signing arbitration, because of the amount of the dispute, we still were able to go to small claims. So I know a lot of people think that doesn't, or it eliminates that, but I don't believe it does, because I have been able to go to small claims even with that, because I've had agents say, oh, well, you're not going to sue because you can't go to small claims. And I'm like, okay, well, we'll see about that. And we actually did. So, and they won. So it's possible, just depending, I guess, on what it is. And let's see. So basically, and then just remember, everything in the offer is what it is. So terms and condition of the offer, this is what it is. So anything that's said outside or whatever is not incorporated into this written agreement. It may not hold any weight. And I personally have been in arbitration, and the arbitrator kept reading that sentence over and over, because the person kept saying, I text this, I text that. And he kept reading it over and over and said, anything that's not in here, anything that's not in here, that's what addendums are for. So just make sure that if they say, yeah, you know what, we're going to go ahead and give you those extra 2 days at no charge, no problem. Okay, I'm sending the addendum over now. Make sure you get that in writing by everybody, so you don't have issues, later. Time is of the essence, entire contract. So time is of the essence, exactly as it says. That means that all the dates, everything in there is the way it should be. So try to abide by those dates as much as possible. In the event you need an extension for your closing, for your contingencies, for anything at all, make sure you put it in writing. That way they can't cancel on you. They won't send you a notice to perform. You still are within your contract terms. Take your contract very seriously. Know that it is binding, it is a legal contract, and how you treat it is how your client's going to treat it. So you need to make sure that, when escrow is open, depending on who you use, whether it's a TC or yourself, those important dates as far as, your deposits due this day, this is due this day, your inspection contingency, your appraisal, your loan, closing, walkthrough, all those dates are sent to them so they know and they stay on track and they know, oh shoot, this is coming up. What do we have to do by then? Because I tell them, as on this date, I am going to have a conversation with you and we're either signing everything off and moving forward or we're canceling. And they're like, wait, canceling? Well, because you have to decide if you're going to, if this is the right home for you, based on all your findings and everything you had. So basically we get to that. They already know, they're expecting that date. And so they're like, hey, okay, Sonia, we're moving forward. Like, we want this house. Okay, great. So now there's no question, as to, wait, we signed all our contingencies. When did that happen? They know what they've done. So always make it, so that way they understand and they don't ever question, when did we do that? I don't remember you saying that, so that's kind of why I do it that way. And so here we go with the buyers. Like we talked about buyer signature, if there's an entity, how to do that. And then of course your information. Oh, down here, this is what I was saying. If there's more than 2 signers, this is where you're going to select this, and they're going to add the additional signature addendum. So make sure you complete that as well to incorporate those buyers' signatures as well. And if you notice, they added, well, the buyer investigation advisory has always been there, but they've added, I think these are all have been there. The buyer's homeowner's insurance advisory. This is super important. Making sure that they can obtain insurance. This is, I think, one of the biggest issues right now. I have a couple buyers and their policies are no less than $3,000 to $4,000 a year. So whereas we were used to getting quote, I remember when I first started, like $300 to $500 a year. Oh my gosh. And then now we're, all the way up to, realistically $3,000 to $4,000. So just make sure, obviously their lenders are quoting them correctly, because that could make or break what they qualify for. There's just a lot of things that this can affect. So just make sure that you are addressing the homeowner's insurance and giving them all that information. And that's additional signature addendum. Okay, that's it. That's basically all of that. One thing I wanted to show you guys really quick before I open it up for Q&A is what I take with me to my when I talk to buyers for the first time, because basically all let me see, hold on, let me find. All contracts are the same, right? I mean, not the same, but the generally, right? There's certain things that are different. So let me stop sharing and then reshare again. So what I take with them is the items that I want to make sure that we're on the same page about and they understand. So, oh man, I don't know if I don't think I could share this. Hold on a second. How am I going to do this? Let me see if I can save it and share it a different way. I don't know. Justin.
You're trying to share your screen?
I'm trying. It's only letting me use my Chrome tab, and it's not on my Chrome tab. Hold on. Let me see if I do this.
If you click share.
Yeah. Can you
Yeah.
see this? Right?
I see us.
Yeah, I know. Hold on.
When you click the share tab, you can click the specific window.
Can you see this now? Or no?
No, we don't see anything.
Okay.
If you go to your share tab, you can
It
click the
was there,
specific
and I
window,
thought,
like
I,
desktop. Does that make sense? Is it open on your desktop, like on your screen?
yeah.
And then when you go to the share button on Zoom, there should be the specific window that's open. Like you can pick it, like screens, documents, advanced on the top of the share button.
It won't. It won't. It's not there.
And documents, not in documents.
Uh-uh. It says Chrome tab, but oh wait,
It's a Chrome tab or it's a file.
no, it's it's on my PDF expert. It's on a different hold on a second. Let me see. Let me try to do this. So if I have it on my desktop,
Mm-hmm.
the window, Chrome. Uh-uh. What if I send it to you and you share it?
Sure. Send it to me.
I'm just thinking because I can't figure it out and I don't want to waste. If does anyone have any questions? Meanwhile, we try to figure this out.
Josie's asking which home warranty do you recommend? Did you answer that already?
No, I haven't answered that. Hold on a
Which
second.
home warranty do you recommend?
I use Old Republic home warranty. Oops, wait, hold on, just let me send this to you. I'm trying to multitask. Okay, I just sent it to you. Hopefully you can share it. I've been using Old Republic for gosh, the last 15 years or so. And again, like I said, I like to build relationships. I have in the last couple gosh, maybe last two transactions, I am actually trying a new one. I'll let you know how that goes, only because my lady might be retiring soon. So I'm kind of bummed out about that. But I can tell you, building relationships, is important. Because I'm very loyal to her and I send her all my business when I do have an issue with my clients. I call her and she will do the best she can and make it right for the client and myself. So I appreciate that. And that's why I believe loyalty is very important. I know a lot of times we want to give business to whoever kind of roams around the office or whatever, but honestly, that's really not the way to go. You definitely want to connect with the right person. So, talk to the different reps and see who is going to be able to, give you the best, feedback regarding their company and, in different scenarios that happen. Because you don't want an angry person calling you about something that was denied. Remember, they're an insurance company. So just like anything else, they're going to find the reason why not to pay for that claim. So it's important to know how to structure certain calls, and she's super good about guiding me when I have questions about. I'll tell her, hey, this is what's happening. She'll say, make sure when they call they say this and never to say this, because that ruins that immediate is a disqualification. So like I said, just having her in my corner has been really, really a blessing, honestly. So try her, Lisa Masterson with Old Republic, but I know she's going to be, like I said, retiring soon. So I'll let you know soon on the other one how it works out. So on this form is what I give to my clients for the first time when I'm meeting them. So if you want to scroll up, Justin, to where you see the red. So I create this on the property that I'm going to show them. And we go over when I hand them, I usually give them a folder of whatever, information I want them to have about the properties that we're touring. And I'll leave a blank offer on one of the properties. And so basically I just, how do you guys want, this is only the first time I'm actually going to be writing an offer. I have it, I create this and I just ask them, how do you want your names, to appear on the offer? So that, we go over that, we talk about that. And then obviously next thing, purchase price, go back down, Justin, sorry. Purchase price, how fast do you want to close escrow? We talk in detail about those things, their initial deposit, where it goes, the importance of that. Okay, go ahead, go up. And then any credits, is there anything that we need to be asking for? Again, I'm not going to assume for them. And if they do say, hey, Sonia, can the buyer pay my closing costs? It doesn't mean that I get them to pay the closing costs. I'll talk to them about that. I'll have that conversation, whether I think it's a good idea or not, based on the property and based on how competitive maybe we have to be. But it is a conversation that we do have, because I don't want them to feel that I just don't care, or I just am deciding for them on what's best for them. I want to give them the information so that way they understand. And then at that point, they can make a decision. Oh yeah, you know what, on this one, we'll pay for ourselves. We'll do it ourselves. And then the next thing obviously is contingencies, talking about contingencies, talking about the timeframes and them understanding what contingencies mean. And then the next thing is possession, depending on if this property is occupied or not. But, I do discuss different, if it was seller, this is what would happen. If it was buyer, this would happen. And I mean, not buyer, a tenant or vacant or whatever. And then again, we get into the items included and excluded. That conversation is important to have. Like I mentioned to you guys, it's important because sometimes they're thinking things, but they don't tell you, but maybe they think they tell you. I'm up in age. I'll tell you that. And I could tell you that there's certain things, that conversations maybe I had with my own self, that I think I told you that. And I didn't actually tell you that. I told myself that I was going to tell you that, but I didn't tell you that. So I no longer rely on that. And I definitely make sure that I go through each of these things with them. And then the home warranty, like I mentioned, we do discuss home warranty and the benefits of it. And maybe they may have to pay more and, da, 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 da. So this is something, like I said, I do carry with me. I think it's been really helpful. And you want to gain trust. You want your clients to truly, truly appreciate you and to truly, truly, feel connected with you, because you're really giving them a lot of information, and you're able to educate them. And I think that's the biggest thing, is they want to know that you are educating them and you are helping them to understand. So having those conversations, like I mentioned, are really important to making it successful, throughout the whole thing. There's going to be hiccups. There always is. But knowing that, you've done things in the right way, you can get past them. And I think that's the most important thing. So does anyone have any other questions? I know we're like just about out of time.
Sonia, I have a couple questions.
Yes.
Real quick, first off, how do you highlight that in red? How do you highlight that form?
I use PDF Expert. It's one of my apps. It could be on your iPad or on your Mac. And so
Okay.
I can show you if you. I love PDF Expert. I use it for everything. So to me, it's a great
I've never
tool
heard
for
of it.
agents. Yeah.
Okay.
And
And
I can
that's
show
something
you.
you can have on your desktop?
Yes. And so I
Okay.
use it when I'm sending my offers. I put all my offers in one PDF. I attach things. I can highlight things. I
Oh,
can make
cool.
note of things.
Okay.
So that
I'll look
way,
at that.
yeah. So that way the agents, if I need them to really look at
Yeah,
something or
I
whatever. So
love that. Yeah.
yeah.
And then, sorry, two more questions. So on L8B, so appraisal, I usually always write in the comments, like if we offer, 900,000 and my buyer's willing to go, if it appraises at, 850, he's willing to pay 500 or 50,000. I'm confused on so appraisal contingency based upon appraised value at a minimum of purchase price, or a dollar amount. I would put no more than 50,000, no more than 10,000 above appraised value. How are you supposed to put that in there? Am I reading that
So
wrong?
no. So basically, what you do, hold on a minute real quick. Sorry. Okay. So on there, it says appraisal contingency based upon appraised value at a minimum or purchase
Mhm.
price. So basically what it's
Okay.
saying is the appraisal has to come in at the price, right? So like, let's say you're in
Yep.
contract for 500,000. So
Yep.
without doing anything, that's how it reads, which we know,
Yep.
if we're not removing our contingency. Or it says what price. So basically, let's say your clients are willing to go 10,000 above. So if
Right.
you're in escrow for 500,000, then you can put or 510. Does that make
Okay.
sense?
Yeah, it
So
does.
let's
So,
say you offered 550
yeah,
and you're like, oh, they had it listed for 500. I don't know. And so you're willing to, your client's like, you know what, I'm willing to pay, 10,000. But if you're willing to pay 10,000 above appraised value, then that wouldn't go there. That's just if there's a set price. So like you're saying, if you wanted to say you wanted to go above a certain appraised value, then that how you're doing it is the right way because there's no other
okay,
way to do it. This is
right.
just this is a dollar amount that you would put
I
if
really wouldn't use this then because I'm
yeah,
not telling them my buyer, they're like willing to pay more than they're offering
yeah.
off the top,
Right,
right?
exactly.
So,
I think that this got incorporated when people were going crazy.
yeah, okay,
I really don't see that being
okay.
used at this point.
And then the other one, Q2 for who pays for the what was it, Q2? Optional wildfire disclosure report.
Yeah.
So do we have, so are we supposed to put that there? Because I mean, we're waiting for the NHD to see if it's in the fire zone, right?
Right. So that's why it says optional because we don't know if it's required or
Okay,
not. And
okay,
so, but at that time is where you're going to mark, who you're kind of setting up to pay for it, basically at that time. But I've been marking seller, and so a lot of the agents are like, "Well, we're not in fire, so I'm just going to remove it from the contract." And they're like, "And if
right.
we are, then we'll go from there." So again, I as a listing agent, I order my NHD as soon as I take listing, so I know, if that's
No,
something that we're going to have
right.
to do or
But
not.
if
So
a lot of agents don't, so if I
no.
mark this seller and there's 10 offers, I don't want my offer to be put aside. Oh, they are asking for this, so no. You know what I mean? Do I
Right.
have
You don't have, you can always negotiate later, but
yeah,
I'm the type of person that I like to negotiate up front because it's
yeah,
kind of like once you're sometimes it's
okay,
not as easy to negotiate
right.
certain things.
That's
So,
true. Depending
you
on
know,
what the offer is, how many offers in and stuff. Yeah, okay, to make it
exactly.
aggressive. Okay, thank you. That was it. Thank you so much. You're so
Okay.
helpful all the time.
Oh, thank you. Does anyone else have any questions? Gosh, you guys are all smart and I love it.
Oh,
Yes, Marisela, I do go over it if we're going to be writing an offer. And I could tell you that 98.9% of the time we are. So yes.
Sonia, ¿a quién usas para home warranty?
Old Republic.
¿O Republic con
Lisa
quién?
Masterson, yeah.
Oh, okay.
and then one more thing,
Yes.
since I have you here, on the buyers. So I haven't worked with the buyers since this whole NAR situation. So I haven't shown property since then. Do you use the form that Rod has as the one that he composed, just the one page? Do you use that?
No, I actually do sign the BRBC. Most of my
The first
clients,
time?
they're already approved. I've already done a buyer consultation. I really don't just show up, to a property. So they sign it the minute they're approved and we're ready to move forward to start looking at properties.
Got it.
But if like some of these Zillow, so now we're going to start doing some of these Zillow Flex buyers where obviously you don't know them, they don't know you, so you have to build relationships. So
Right,
it's a little bit different.
right,
So on these particular ones, like if I didn't know this client, and I know you get a lot of referrals, so they're already comfortable with you, so they trust you. It's
right,
just different.
right. Yeah.
But with someone I didn't know, I would probably just meet them at the property, and at that point, just have them sign either a touring, where you can sign that you're just touring that one property or two properties or whatever, or it's for that day, or it's for that weekend, or whatever the case is, because
Okay.
that gives you the time to even see if it's something you want to do. If they're
Right.
not willing to start getting pre-approved and they're just going to waste your time, then at that time you decide if it's even someone you want to work with.
Okay, got it. Thanks. Okay, that was it.
Anyone else before we end?
Do you need that compensation form? Sonia? From
What's
Rod?
that?
I have the Rod version.
You know what? If you want to resend it to everybody, I think that would be
Yeah.
great.
I'm
It's
gonna
in the
leave it.
Dropbox, right? We
Yeah, I
have
have
a,
the Dropbox link.
yeah, that would
Okay.
be great. Then I
Yeah,
can
just
save it
drop
to
it
my
again.
desktop. Mhm.
Yeah,
I
can you send
will
it
drop
us,
it in the
please?
comments right now.
Okay,
Perfect, thank
perfect.
you.
Sonia, what do you, can you hear me?
So the touring, Patricia, is
Yeah.
the rod form basically.
The one they're gonna send right now?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, wait,
Okay.
wait, that's the wrong. I sent the wrong one by accident.
Okay, no worries.
Sonia, when you sign the exclusive contract with the buyer, the first the
The
BB
BRBC?
yeah, the BRBC, yeah. When you signed it.
When?
Yes.
Well, if they were referred to me, I do a buyer's consultation. So I invite them to come into the office, and then, or a coffee shop, depending on how far they are, where they're going to be looking. And then at that moment, I do the buyer consultation. I typically have the lender with me. And then we get them pre-approved, or, kind of go over, and we can see what direction they're going in at that point. So at that time, I can have them, sign it. Or if they just were like, I just wanted to see kind of where I stood, but we're not going to look till March, then I'll wait, because it's only good for 3 months. That's the max. So I'm not going to make them sign it now till March. So when they're ready, I'll just stay in touch with them. And then once we're ready to start, to hit it, to go out, that's when I have them sign it.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So
And
the forms are in the comment
Yeah.
section. If you need to download it, please do so now, because once we end the call,
yeah,
it's
There's
gonna
2 forms?
yeah, there's a CRE one and the Remax one.
Oh, okay.
do you
And-
have the link to the Dropbox we could get to easy or no?
Yes, so it's on our Pulse page on
Okay,
Facebook. It's in the
Okay.
top, on the very top of the comments, and then you can scroll through those notifications, and it's on there. Updated
Okay.
compensation agreement form.
okay.
This is the
No.
compensation. I'm sorry. This is the compensation that going together with the BRBC to the
No, this is if you don't want to sign the BRBC, you have to eventually sign it once you write the offer, but this is just so that way you can show property. It's like a tour, more of a tour, to be able to show a property.
Oh, okay. Sounds good.
Justin, I'm on the Facebook Pulse page. Where did you say it was? I see files, but I was trying to get
If you go onto the discussion page, like where the comments
it.
are,
Yep,
on the very top part, right under where you write something, there's a
Featured.
section on there that says featured.
Yep.
And
Got
then if you up to, and there's a picture that says updated compensation agreement form.
okay.
And then you click into that, and the Dropbox links are in there to download.
Okay.
Here, let me show my screen.
Yeah, I'm on it. I see Champions Update 2025. Okay.
It's right here. You see my screen?
Yep.
So right here, where it says featured,
Oh, okay.
it says featured right there, and then updated compensation agreement form.
Yep.
You click that, and the Dropbox links are right here.
Oh, got it. Thank you.
Yeah, of
Thank you.
course.
Thank you.
So, this is a good time now. So all these forums, we're leaving this Facebook group, guys.
Yeah, I know.
We are going to an app, so it's going to be a lot easier to get files, a lot easier to look at certain things. We're going to have a different chat now. We do have a monthly event that's happening once a month called Success Rally, which we're going to release numbers. We're going every owner, Jennifer's going to be speaking, every department is going to be speaking, and that's going to be on the 4th. And that's when I'm going to be releasing the app as well to everybody. So that's one thing that you guys don't want to miss.
Yeah, mark your calendars, February 4th.
February 4th. Here, let me share the actual flyer so that everybody here is notified. February 4th, guys. Let me see. Here you go. So February 4th.
That is Champions Town Hall, something like that.
Yeah, it's called Success Rally now.
Oh, okay. So you changed.
This is going to be once a month. So the number, so not this upcoming one, but after this upcoming one, we're going to start releasing the numbers and applauding all of our top agents. You can ask questions. It's a place for, we want to build for you guys to ask questions for every department, for anything, from marketing to contracts to anything you can think of.
Is it Zoom?
It's going to be in person. At
Oh,
like
in person. Okay.
So every month it will be in person, or
yes,
just the
it'll be
first
in
one?
person.
Okay.
And Justin, you record all of your in-person videos and then put it on a platform, yes?
We do, yes.
Okay, so if we're not there, we can view it on, is it a YouTube, Remax YouTube?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, sorry, Sonia. I just thought I had to advertise
No,
that.
you're good. You're good. Thank you guys again for joining. If you need the recording, I'm sure Justin will share it. But any other questions, feel free to reach out.
Thank you. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you very much, Sonia and
you.
Justin.
Okay, you're
Of course.
welcome.
Bye, everybody.
Okay, take
Bye.
care.
Thank you.